It's the nomination day for the filing of candidacies for the election to the president tomorrow. Although a ceremonial position, the hype surrounding president's election has disintegrated the existing power share, giving way to new power equation as 8 parties today join hands to support Nepali Congress's bid for presidency. Good evening, I'm Amar Singh Pradhan and these are the headlines of the hour. The much-touted Balkot agreement of December 25 disintegrates as 8 parties decide to lend their support to Nepali Congress bid for presidency. The Supreme Court rejects rape-accused cricketer Sandeep Lamichhane's return, leaving the country to play cricket abroad. Hearing on his judicial custody pushed to coming Sunday. The government begins preparations to lay off contract employees as the generated revenue falls short to fund the remunerations. And Nepal begin the ICC Under-19 campaign in style. Cross Singapore by 96 runs. Nepal take on Kuwait tomorrow. The much-touted Balkot agreement of December 25 has been disintegrated in just under 2 months' time. With Prime Minister Pushpakamal Dahal along with 7 other parties arriving at a consensus to support Nepali Congress candidate for the presidential election, the 5-party alliance is now crisis-ridden. An 8-party meeting held at the Prime Minister's official residence in Balwatar decided to support Nepali Congress candidate for the presidential election. CPN Maoist Center, Unified Socialist, Janta Samajwadi, Janmat, Loktantrik Samajwadi, Rashtriya Janmorcha and Nagrik Unmukti reached the agreement at Balwatar earlier this evening. Nepali Congress, meanwhile, is yet to finalize on the presidential candidate. The 8 parties have now geared up to file their nomination for the presidential election at 1 p.m. tomorrow. During the meeting today, Prime Minister Pushpakamal Dahal and Unified Socialist Chair Madhakumar Nepal had proposed Nepali Congress's candidacy for the post of the president. Despite the consensus, the meeting today has not decided on the Congress candidate to bag the post. Earlier, Prime Minister Dahal had held a 2-hour-long meeting with UML Chair KP Sharma Oli, which eventually didn't prove fruitful. UML Chair Oli had left Balwatar around 4:30 p.m. and had immediately called on Unified Socialist Chair Madhakumar Nepal. Even as the Oli Nepal meeting was underway, Congress leaders had already reached Balwatar for another parley with the Prime Minister. Loktantrik Samajwadi's Mahanta Thakur, Nagrik Unmukti's Ranjita Shrestha, Janmat Party's Abdul Khan and Rashtriya Janmorcha's Chitra Bahadur Kesi and Durga Paudel also joined the meeting at Balwatar. In the meantime, CPN-UML has decided to field its own candidate for the presidential election. The Election Commission has made voting arrangements for the election of the President and Vice President only in Kathmandu, which requires voters from all 7 provinces to reach the federal capital. Nepal is a federal republic country and therefore the voting procedures must have been ensured in all 7 provinces. However, the centralized approach of the Commission has compelled the voters to reach Kathmandu while affecting the works of the provinces. 332 members of the House of Representatives and 550 Provincial Assembly members will vote in the March 9 presidential election and March 17 election of the Vice President. As the federal parliamentarians operate in Kathmandu, it may not be a big issue for them. However, members of provincial assemblies from Province 1 in the east to Sudur Paschim in the far west are required to arrive in Kathmandu to vote in the 2 elections. Laws related to the election of the President and Vice President does not prohibit holding polls in all provinces. However, the Election Commission has said that the requirement of monitoring of the polls by one election officer has restricted it from holding polls in all provinces. While having voters arrive in Kathmandu from all provinces increases unnecessary cost, it also adds a burden to the voters. In addition to that, as the Chief Ministers, Speakers, Deputy Speakers and Assembly members of all provinces are required to be in Kathmandu for more than a week, works of the provinces will be severely affected. However, the Commission has remained indifferent to this issue. Police have prepared a special security plan and arrangement for the presidential election slated for 9th of March. Valley Police Office has prepared a special security arrangement for voters, including provincial chief ministers, and assembly members who will arrive in Kathmandu for the elections at the Parliament building in New Baneswar. Police will intensify security at the accommodation areas for the province chief ministers and assembly members arranged by the respective parties. As VIPs from across the country will be at the Parliament building on the days of elections, police will also be deploying officials in plain clothes. Around 4,000 security personnel are to be deployed for the election of the President and Vice President. And in our Public Voice segment, we have asked what do they term the compulsion for province assembly members to reach Kathmandu to vote in the presidential election, even in federalism. Let's take a look at what they have to say.
Public Voice.
संविधानकै सदस्य समेत हुइ जान पर्ने चाहिँ यो चाहिँ हामीलाई अचम्म लागिरहेको छ।
अधिकार सम्पन्न संघीयता हो भने त तपाईको यहीबाट व्यवस्थापन हुनु पर्थ्यो नि त। अनलाइन भोटिङको माध्यमबाट गर्न सक्दा चाहिँ राम्रो हुन्थ्यो।
यहाँदेखि त्यहाँसम्म जानलाई कठिनाइ पनि हुन्छ।
डिजिटल युगमा त यहीबाट आफ्नो मत जाहेर गर्न पाउने त व्यवस्था हुनु पर्थ्यो।
निर्वाचन आयोगले 7वटै प्रदेशमा यो मतदान गर्ने व्यवस्था गर्नु पर्थ्यो।
The Election Commission has made public the final voters' name list for the election of the President slated for March 9 and that of the Vice President scheduled for 17th of March. The Election Commission has published the list of voters, including the 332 members of the House of Representatives and 550 members of the provincial assemblies. Issuing the name of voters on Wednesday, the Commission had allocated until 12 noon Thursday to file complaints. Applications were filed to include the name of one additional voter and amend the names of 4 voters. After making required changes, the Commission published the list of 882 voters. Rashtriya Prajatantra Party has decided not to propose or support any candidate in the elections of the President and the Vice President. At today's meeting of the party held at its office in Dumbarai, Rashtriya Prajatantra Party decided not to propose or support any candidate. Meanwhile, the party is divided on whether or not to vote in the presidential election. The party has said that a decision in this regard would be taken on 7th of March. The Supreme Court today, hearing on a case filed against Sandeep Lamichhane, concluded that the national cricketer who was facing a rape charge was not eligible to leave the country to play any cricket tournament abroad. Meanwhile, the hearing on the other writ filed by the Office of the Attorney General seeking judicial custody of the tainted cricketer while the case was investigated could not take place due to lack of time. Earlier, the Patan High Court had released Lamichhane on a bail amount of 2 million rupees, toppling the verdict of Kathmandu District Court, citing that it was not necessary to detain Lamichhane on judicial custody while he was being investigated. The decision had paved way to Sandeep's participation at the recently held ICC World League 2 Tri-Series, where he had performed well as a bowler, claiming 13 wickets in the 4 matches. The government has begun preparations to lay off contract employees as the generated revenue is inadequate to fund the remunerations. The Ministry of Finance has corresponded with ministries, projects and other departments to furnish details with the objective of laying off employees. The ministry has said that laying off will be carried out based on the necessity after complete information is obtained. Prior to this, the Ministry of Finance had corresponded with all 3 tiers to reduce the current expenditure by 20%. With 554 billion rupees spent in current expenditure in the ongoing fiscal year so far, only 534 billion rupees has been collected in revenue. The government has identified laying off of the employees as the option to reduce expenses after continuous drop in revenue. However, former administrators have said that the government must be sensitive while reducing the number of contract employees. Around 32,000 were serving in the capacity of contract employees for the government 4 years ago. The government has delayed the process of preparation of budget for the upcoming fiscal year. The National Planning Commission has just begun allocating ceilings for the ministries while it should have been done before the mid of December. Based on the existing arrangements, the National Planning Commission is to issue the ceiling and directives to ministerial portfolios for development of budget by the mid of December. However, the Commission has begun allocating the ceiling only from the third week of February. The ministries will now follow the ceiling set by the Commission to prepare their plans and program for the budget. The practice of preparing budget for fiscal years has marked 71 years in Nepal. Based on the Constitution of Nepal, the budget is required to be presented by the federal government on the 15th of Jesta as per the Nepali calendar, which falls in the end of May. Preparation works for the budget begin from mid of October every year. The Resources Committee, led by the National Planning Commission Vice Chairperson, begins works of setting the size and allocating resources from mid-October. The committee allocates resources and ceiling for ministries and departments by mid-December. Based on the ceiling, the ministries and the entities present their plans and programs. The departments and offices present their programs along with required funds through the line Ministry Budget Information System LMBIS by mid-January. All ministries are then required to make amendments after assessing the programs received from the departments by the mid of February. During the same time period, the Ministry of Finance also conducts the semi-annual assessment of the budget of the ongoing fiscal year. Policy discussions are then held by the ministerial portfolios by mid-March. Works on the draft of the budget begin on the basis of plans included by the ministries in the LMBIS and the directive of the Finance Minister from the mid-March. Discussions also begin on the headings of the budget from this period. Draft of the budget prepared on the basis of recommendations of experts, private sector and leaders of ruling parties is assessed from mid-April. The LMBIS is then set on 12th of Jan, 3 days before it is presented. The Prime Minister and the President are informed about the budget on the eve of the announcement. It is then printed and kept inside the briefcase. The briefcase is then presented at the Council of Ministers on the morning of the 15th of Jan, following which the Finance Minister declares it at the meeting of the House of Representatives. During the budget development process, intervention of political parties and interest groups is seen as well. It's now time for our segment Public Pulse, where we text us with their opinion.
Public Pulse.
Why have works or projects to be funded by donors not been taken forward? And 66% of you voted for option A, government indifference. 16% voted for option B, legal complications, and 18% voted for option C, complex terms and conditions of donors. Here is our today's question, and the question is, what's your take on the government initiation at slashing the number of contract employees? Your options are option A, trying to curb expenses, option B, to recruit others, and option C, administrative inconsistency. The voting is on. To have any WS selector option A, B or C and send it to 34001 to share opinion with us. And now time for sports update.
Sports news.
Nepal under-19 cricket team have thrashed Singapore by 96 runs in the under-19 men's cricket World Cup Asia qualifier match played earlier today. In the match played at the Eden Garden Oval Azman, Nepal won the toss and elected to bat as they posted 261 runs for the loss of 7 wickets. Akash Tripathi top scored for Nepal with 78 runs, while Vishal Kesi added 63 runs from 54 balls. Arjun Kumal contributed 37 and skipper Dev Khanal remained not out on 21. Aryavir Chaudhary and Abudev Chahar picked 2 wickets each for Singapore, while Aditya Bhargava and Mahiu Bhatia shared a wicket apiece. In reply, Singapore were restricted to 165 runs for the loss of 7 wickets. Aryan Modi top scored with 58 runs, while Siddhant Srikanth made 44 runs. Chhajar and Arjun Nagpal scored 14 runs each, while none of the other batters scored in double digits. Hemant Dhami and Subhas Bhandari picked 2 wickets each for Nepal, while Vishal had 1 scalp. Nepal next play Kuwait tomorrow. A-Division team armed police force came back from behind against the Kauran Bazar FC Dhaka to progress to the semi-finals of the Bhadrapur Chapa Gold Cup. AFP won against Kauran in sudden death. The visiting side from Bangladesh were ahead in the first half of the match played at the Mechi Stadium as Sayar found the back of the net in the 21st minute. Yuvraj Khadka brought the departmental team on level terms in the 71st minute. As the regulation 90 minutes ended in 1-1 draw, the match was decided through sudden death after the tiebreaker also ended 5-5. And up next is weather update. And those were our latest headlines. Up next is News in Nepali. Good night.